you can see the signs. Nui ake ngā mea ko mōhio ke te rau. Ngā tamariki, kei te mōhio. Engari ko rātau mātua, ka hare te tino mōhio, ko e te kei te mōhio. But that generation of mātua though, present one, I think it's less culturally prepared than the kids that are coming up now.
Ahorangi tā Hirini Moko Mead is one of our greatest educationalists. Raised in Murupara and attending St Stephen's and Te Aute College, Sir Hirini Moko Mead would dedicate his life to Māori education. At the vanguard of Mātauranga Māori, beginning with the Te Māori exhibition in 1984, we interview Tā Hirini Moko Mead in the archives carrying the name of his wife, Lady June, and the library which bears his name at the university he founded, Te Whare Wānanga, Wawanuiarangi. The chief negotiator of the Ngāti Awa claim, he is a staunch and fierce advocate for Mātauranga Māori, Māori arts and culture, te reo Māori, me ona tikanga. This is his story. Ahorangi, Tā Hirini Moko Mead on Indigenous 100.
E ngai wi tēnā rā koutou katoa a ngā maira. We're here in Whakatāne at Te Whare Wānanga Wawanuiarangi in the Sir Hirini Moko Mead Library. Te Whare Puka e whakamaharana I ngā mahi a Tā Hirini Moko Mead a Ahorangi Hirini Moko Mead kei taku taha I Aianei. We're here in the archives room, which also bears the name of his wife, Lady June Mead, and remembers also Sir Harawira Gardner. And with me now is distinguished Professor Sir Hirini Moko Mead, who I hope doesn't mind me calling him Koroua. E te Koroua. Tēnā koe. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak to you today, because there is so much to talk to you about. But I wanted to begin by being in this place with you. And the name, as I said, that remembers your wife, Lady June, who with you committed so much to Te Ao Māori, who also co-authored books with you, celebrating Mātauranga Māori. Seeing and hearing and having your name here in this library at Te Whare Wānanga Wawanuiarangi, a word that comes to mind at Te Koroua is legacy. What do you think when people talk about you in that way?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know what they think. And I don't know how much they actually know of what I have done. And I think even my people here really don't know. And that's because I've lived so long. And the ones who did know have gone. They've passed on. And the next generation that's come along don't really have the same kind of knowledge of what I've done. They just know, oh, he koroua tēnei. He has a bit of mana around here. And I'm treated with respect. And so I gather from that the legacy is that they do, some of them do remember what has been done and what I have achieved for the iwi, and the many battles that I fought. And one could say that, yes, I did walk the talk. I did face up, to the iwi, because different one did ask me, why did you go back and work with the iwi? And I said, well, because I was in touch, with the elders. I was in touch with them. And when I came back from Canada, there was some going like this out of my and my elders then, like Eduarda, was alive at that time, and all his sisters were still alive. So I had a huge whakapapa backing when I came back. And now Pro Eduarda said, there's a lot of work to be done now that you're here. And as he was the leader of our whānau, he sort of put it very simply, māue mai. And those were heavy words, māue mai. But in one sense, I was honored by that he thought and they thought that I could do it. For instance, returning the whare, mātātua whare, they said, māue mai. And I think they were shrewd enough to know that maybe I could, with the education background that I have, or that I had at the time, that probably I knew enough to make it possible. And I think for me, the strong support that they gave me all the way through, especially the treaty claim, that was hard work, as everyone else has found. It's hard work. And maintaining the unity of your people is the most difficult part of it all, because that process seems to find weaknesses in our systems. And then all sorts of things begin to happen. And some iwi almost fall apart in the process. Whereas I think here in Aotearoa we did not fall apart. In fact, the opposite was happening. Mainly because the elderly group were fairly united, I think, through the Ringatu Church. That bound them together. So the Rangataiki end and the Whakatane end were all Ringatu. Even though at this end, I think they were mainly Katorika, and at the other end, I think they were Presbyterian mostly, and Anglican. But there were enough of the elders who were in the Ringatu Church that provided a basis for unifying the iwi. And one of my kuia said they as the Ringatu Church tried their best to unify Ngāti. And she said they couldn't do it. And so it was back to Māori mai. And I said to them, why do you think I can do it? And I think the answer was, you come with, because you have no baggage. Because I'd come from Canada. I just come back from Canada and didn't have all the local raru on my back. Weren't part of any of it. So I was clear of all the factions. Maybe, that might have been one of the reasons why I was able to come in and unite them all.
But that also requires, at Te Korowa, requires a certain skill set.
Yes.
That doesn't potentially come from a life in Canada or indeed your international experience in education. Although a lot of the foundational parts of that are due to upbringing and whānau and being nurtured by grandparents and schooling. Were you aware in your younger days, if I can put it that way, that there was a sense of obligation or expectation being placed upon you that would eventually lead to these things that we're talking about now?
No.
Never.
No, never. Never. And I became a whāngai. I was whāngai'd out. And I grew up in the Ngāti Manawa, not here, with a distant uncle, an auntie and uncle. And there were two of us, one of her uncles and I, and we're both whāngai to the same whānau. And the amazing thing about that, we both found it hard. It was hard. Because the family we were with, and like all the families of Ngāti Manawa at that time, all poor. All very poor. But he ended up chairman of the Aotearoa Trust Board, and I ended up chairman from the Rurunanga o Ngāti Awa. And I said to him, that's something strange. Here we are, we were thrown out. And you, on our Tūhaurangi side, went there. And I came back here to Ngāti Awa, and we both ended up in leadership positions. And Wira Gardner was also a whāngai. And he said, there's probably the whāngai experience that's done that. It's put us on our mettle.
I also get a sense of the hand of, I don't know how you feel about it when people talk like this, but the hand of tupuna at play.
Oh, there's a lot of that. A lot of that at play, yes. And I'm very, very grateful for it, actually. Once we got into the Waitangi tribunal process, I met regularly with the kaumātua. Just regularly, every time we struck some problem, call all the kaumātua together. And the kaumātua then were different from the ones now. They were still hooked in, to the older ways.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It's a generational shift. And I think with each generation, they take away something. We never quite know what it is that they took away. But I would say the Wairua Māori, they may have been more colonized than us now, but they had this wairua of whanaungatanga. They were more cohesive as whānau. And I think poverty caused that. that was a response that whānau had to. They had to work together to survive. And this generation of elders actually showed up very clearly what colonization had done. These are the ones, ko pakeke, kāri te mōhio ki te reo. Kāri te mōhio ki ngā tikanga. It seemed to me that generation after Edward and them showed up the consequences of all of the policies that had been promulgated and forced upon Māori.
And detrimental
Yes.
to Māori.
And here they were, wanting to become matua, but didn't have the reo, the whanau, the family just breaking up,
No.
going to town, going somewhere else, and you're left here with just a little core of them, trying to hold the mana of their marae or their whānau. So it's a generational shift. I think the next one coming up is stronger than the present one.
Really?
Oh yes, you can see the signs. Nui ake ngā mea ko mōhio ke te rau. Ngā tamariki, ka te mōhio. Engari ko rātou mātua, ka hare te tino mōhio, ko e te ka te mōhio. But that generation of mātua though, present one, I think it's less culturally prepared than the kids that are coming up now.
Is that why you're still doing what you're doing now? Do you see yourself as having a role or a responsibility? And even now, you're writing a book at 96, Mātauranga Māori lecture series, led by you. Do you see yourself as having a responsibility to continue to keep working? Because you are, and again, I don't know how you feel about me classifying it in this way, you are the last of that generation.
And yes, I realize that. That all died off. And I'm still here. And it's been a marvelous experience being still here. And that's seeing the developments and looking at the generation coming up. I mean, I see the rangatahi around here now that just far more talented. Seems to me, far more talented. And maybe because of the new technologies now has helped them to be just smarter than the older ones, smarter than their parents even. Some of them are too smart, man.
Present company included, perhaps? I know what you mean, and I think you skillfully and diplomatically avoided the intent of the question, which was your role, because it amazes me that that you still are doing what you're doing in the way in which you are doing it, as robust as you are doing it, as industrious as you are at this age. And I wonder what continues to motivate and invigorate that. Is it that sense of duty and responsibility, or is it something else?
Well, I've always been interested in education.
Why was that? Why did that start?
Well, I don't know. That was the first job I ever got into, was school teaching. And from school teaching, I thought, well, is this it for me and for us? By then I was married, in June. And we both agreed, no, there's something else we're going to go for. And so from primary school, we went into tertiary education, meaning we had upskilled ourselves. And when I went overseas to get my doctorate, and met up with Whatarangi Winiata, who was already there. And later on, I came back after gaining that PhD, and then I went back again. Went back to Canada because Whatarangi and Francis were still there. And we set up a fairly close relationship. And he was the first to come back to Vic. And then I followed him and ended up at Vic. And then the next thing, while we were both away in Canada, we often had sessions trying to plan, what the future of Māori might be. Because we often said by being in Canada, we could actually see more clearly that something had to be done. Especially him with his people. He did a bit of research on one of his holiday breaks. Came home. He said he could count on the fingers of one hand the reo speakers. And karanga, yes, and you couldn't even do the five fingers. And so he began planning that whakatipuranga ruamano there in Canada. And we would often have these long discussions about how to proceed and how to make change happen. And Whatarangi was more sort of getting involved, straight away, get into it. And I was to say to him, well, I wouldn't quite do that. I'd go a bit slower, do it more incrementally, a bit at a time. And anyway, he went his way and got straight into it when he came back from Canada. And I think that was one of the most successful programs for raising the cultural capability of the whole tribe. Just amazing.
Yeah.
The consequences of it, the reo just rose. And you now have a lot of Raukawa people who can speak. But I did find out that a lot of Raukawa did not follow, did not join them in that program. I said, well, that's sort of typical. There's always some who pull back, And I said, well, they were just more colonized, than the others. They'll come up, they'll join, just wait, they'll join.
But the idea for Te Whare Wānoa when we arangi, was that born whilst you were in Canada and then developed throughout your experience as Professor of Māori Studies at Victoria University?
No, did not. I didn't even think of it when I was helping Whatarangi do his and get that one going. What it did do, though, however, it gave me the idea of a wānanga. And just watching him and taking part in some of the work he was doing. But I think I'm quite honest in saying that I was not doing it because I wanted to form one. That just hadn't occurred to me. Until,
Really?
No.
Oh.
Until years afterwards I come back. And we're in the middle of our treaty claim. I'm looking around, everyone, it's in grief. And sort of troubled by all this new information that was coming up. And just watching all of that and the effect of it. And I thought then we had to do something to change that. Just to lift the morale of the people and to be more forward-thinking. And that's when the idea came to me that we should develop our own wharewananga.
But the idea of wharewananga, but your idea wasn't that you would lead the evolution and development of that wharewananga. Is that what you felt at the time?
Well, I happened then to be leading the tribe. I was already leading the tribe at that time. And then I thought, that's what it'll do. So we called, no, we didn't call a meeting at our AGM. And everyone knows that AGM. It was at Ngāti Pūkeko, at their marae, when I raised the issue and said to we needed to establish a wharewana. And many of them said, well, what's that? So I had to explain. Oh. And they said, and do we have any money to do that? I said, no. And how are we going to get money to do a wharewana? And our wānanga was poor. Our runa was absolutely poor at that time. We didn't own anything. Just going on hope. Anyway, I said to them, if you all agree that this is what we should do, the money will come. And I looked at several of our queer, especially, we were rolling their eyes in total disbelief. Anyway, I left the idea, just left it alone for a good 5 years. Then I was going on to the next few years and then raised it again. And this time they said, okay, let's put it in our development plan. So it went in the development plan, and from then on, it was a matter of how we're going to do it. So we did something, I think, that no other iwi had thought of at the time. We passed our own enabling act as a runanga. We said we want to establish wharewana. I said, well, how do you do that? I said, well, we can do it. We'll establish it. But we'll put through an act that we pass. So we did. We had this enabling act, and said, right, it was voted in, and away we go, and where we went. We also established enabling committee of 3 to make it happen. And then from then, it just rolled along to what you see now.
I know you talked about, and I think this is the way that potentially you see your work as being, we use the word incremental. a lot of what you've done is actually quite radical.
Well, yes. Well, the main idea, you have to get the idea in.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, these things always begin with hope. It's the spark that gets things going. For example, when we talk about things like Mātauranga Māori, I was about 8 years old. I don't know if you remember. You probably don't, because I was a hautatu. But you were the professor of Māori studies at Victoria University.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people like Con was in the kitchen and Maka Jones.
Yes, they're all there.
They were all there. And my mother was doing tohu Māori time. And at that stage, people used to talk about Māori studies using the phrase taha Māori.
That's right. That was a very popular word at that time.
Not that I knew what that meant at the time, but I used to hear taha Māori. We now use Mātauranga Māori.
Mm.
What is Mātauranga Māori?
Yes, we come to the basic question. Well, we have to go back a bit.
Yeah.
I think Mātauranga Māori is a legacy. It's a rare sort of taonga that just in recent years we began to see it again, because the colonizing forces of the country had determined that no one in New Zealand, as it turned out, I thought it was just anti-Māori, but it turned out nobody. Now, the teaching system was not to be used to teach anything Māori to anybody, to any child. It was prohibited in Māori schools, and as it happened, by just not permitting it and allowing it in general schools, Pākehā kids didn't know anything either. But it was the damage done to the reo, the leadership system, the knowledge system, the religious system. All of those were immediately targeted by the settlers who came here and the missionaries, them combined. And so through suppression, policies of suppression, Mātauranga Māori disappeared. Just went out. Along with it, te reo. Along with it, all our kōrero about the rangi and papa, all our karakia, mostly slipped away. Except in certain places, far away from Pākehā influence, they survived.
Mm.
Places like parts of Ngāti Pro way away, way out. And Tūhoe is one of them, way Ruatahuna, and several places up north. They still spoke the reo. They still knew their mātauranga, their tikanga. They still knew about the rangi and papa. And there were still one or two people who knew karakia. And it was during Te Māori in 1984 when we discovered that there were about that many, and you were even stretched to get that many tohunga who actually knew karakia tūturu and could foot it with Henare Tūpangai. At that time, he was the guru, and actually a very learned old man who knew his karakia and was keen to share it. And so the whole lot of stuff, was suppressed. And then I think once the Treaty of Waitangi Act was passed, things began, to move. And then all the treaty claims began to happen, and all this information began coming back. And I think that's when Mātauranga Māori re-emerged. I think first the reo re-emerged.
Yes.
Then Mātauranga Māori. And the amazing thing about Mātauranga Māori was that not only did Māori seize it when it did come back, but Pākehās loved it. They too wanted it. And so you have Māori trying to gain control for their own cultural development. And this time, waves of Pākehās suddenly interested in Mātauranga Māori. Mm-hmm. So every government department now has a policy on Mātauranga Māori. And we're in the position now that we're not quite sure as Māori whether we own this taonga that is actually a legacy handed down to us from generations who passed on.
I've heard you talk about this before, because it seems ridiculous that Māori cannot or do not own Mātauranga Māori. But I've heard you do presentations and lectures where you've traced, for want of a better way of putting it, the whakapapa of ownership of Mātauranga Māori, which eventually ends up in the hands of the Crown.
Yep.
Which seems absolutely nonsensical to me and wrong. And I don't have a question. But having heard you say that, do you see, again, the responsibility of putting that right and being a part of a movement to ensure that the ownership of Mātauranga Māori stays in Māori hands?
Well, I do cover that in the book that I've written, that we do have to address it. We have to do something about it. And one way was to revive Māori Congress. And this time, don't be too hooked on the idea that we have to do it by ourselves. We can't. Just go to the government and say, we want money to revive Māori Congress so that it can have a part to play in protecting us and also in protecting the reo, protecting Mātauranga Māori, and being not only the protector but the voice within the nation. to let people know that Mātauranga Māori belongs in the first place, to Māori.
Do you think that will occur, given politically where New Zealand is at currently, where we have some political representatives who are even questioning not just the relevance, but the place of a constitutional document like the treaty, where we hear politicians talking about issues like co-governance in the way that they do, which in their view shouldn't exist. Do you think that might happen?
Well, I do, but I think that we can do something about it. My view, all of those people who are bucking the direction in which things are going are simply idiots. They're in the way. And I think the movement will keep going, despite the idiots. Because there are now a lot of Pākehā people who are joining us in this movement. When you look at all the kapahaka groups in our primary schools, some of them absolutely all Pākehā.
No Māori, huh?
Just no Māori. But they're in it. And their parents are supporting them. So I think that there's a movement that is underway now. And I think the idiots can't stop it. They might try.
Yeah. In the lecture series, there's some interesting topics that I wanted to touch on. One in particular towards the end. It's called Te Reo Te Aroha, the language of emotions. As a doctoral student, my misconception or misalignment perhaps, or again trying to think of a better phrase to put it, my misapprehension potentially as a student undertaking our doctoral thesis is that education and study and research is objective. And therefore, again, my misconception was that emotions don't have a part to play in research, that one should be an objective researcher. And therefore, what does emotion have to do with that journey? So when I hear kaupapa like the language of emotion as it relates to education, in particular Mātauranga Māori, how and why are we talking in the way we do about Aotearoa Māori and include things like language of emotion when the traditional notion is that education is dispassionate and not emotional and about the facts and answering questions?
Well, that's because we have, in the Western knowledge system, we often take a subject and we abstract it from social reality and we study it. And we analyze it and we learn from it. And then we just continue to do that as a modus operandi, for a lot of academic people. In reality, that's all being done within a social context. People do have emotions, even your academics. The reality is the emotional part is always there. And I think in law, and you can see it in the legal system, where the legal minds, abstract to that, just look at it. And then it's when it comes to sentencing of Māori, they suddenly realize, hello, there's a bit more about this. There's actually a social context to this whole thing. There's whanaungatanga involved. All these values So it's a way, it's what has become a practice, say, in Western knowledge systems of abstracting things away from social reality. And then when I do a lecture like that, people are amazed. I said, well, that's us, We do have emotions. I mean, even the Prime Minister has got emotions, and sometimes you see them. You see the emotion. Yeah. And we made that the last one. And actually, that was the first one to be done, because I did it after COVID.
Mm.
And I thought, here's a lecture just to show that we academics are aware.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things that come out of there. For example, we've been changing the meanings of some of our words. So manawa now has become heart. But if you look up the dictionary, it doesn't say that.
Yes.
And it goes back to yopuku. That's where it goes. And its primary meaning is bowels. Its next meaning is the bowels of the earth. And I said, now what does that mean? It's got to mean the bowels of our mother, Papatunuku. And again, what does that mean? It means that the depth of sorrow is so deep that we liken it to how Papatunuku felt when the separation occurred. And it's sort of the deepest level of grief is there. But what have we done? Today, mana is heart. And we think all our emotions are in the heart. And that lecture proves that to be not correct. But we have changed.
Do you think that Mātauranga Māori, do you see Mātauranga Māori at its essence, the difference between Mātauranga Māori and what we would call potentially traditional academic research? Knowledge. Is that emotion? Is that you can't take any aspect of Mātauranga Māori out of a context related to community and people and whānau and land and sky, taihao, because emotion is deeply attached to it because of the impact that it has on communities and people.
Yes. Well, I think we're more inclined to pull everything together.
Yeah.
And you carry things along, with you. As you're doing your studies, well, all these other things come in as well. Yeah, your tika comes in, your values come in. In fact, your very beliefs in your mind are at work. And if you are a firm believer in Rangi and Papa, and you believe in Tangaroa, you believe in Tāne, that's going to colour your work.
There's a couple of just other things that I wanted to ask you. One is relating to where you are at this stage in your life now, and as you continue to contribute, do you find us as a people, Te Iwi Māori, more receptive to the kaupapa like Mātauranga Māori that you are talking about and the research that you are doing, or less receptive to this type of research? Because
I think actually the evidence around here, around the whole of Mātātua, is that all the marae are on the move, and they're all having wānanga on all sorts of topics. And then they find, they've got to do a bit of research. So, it's all coming together. And it's just happening out here. It's quite common that you hear somebody is arranging a wānanga on some aspect of Mātauranga Māori, maybe mō and lots of kapahaka things going on, and thousands of people engaged in that. We now have papa moko. We're not dealing with individual moko anymore. We're dealing with whole groups of them.
sometimes whole whānau.
So it's gathering momentum. And those ones that are kapa or papa moko, they go into the reasons why you're doing it, the knowledge in the mātauranga. And so, yeah, I think we do carry everything along, and it's really the context also in which we do it.
I'm glad you answered the question in that way, because the next immediate question that follows on from that is, so can you see the individual impact you have made in that continuing revolution, revitalization, re-emergence of those kinds of things? Because I think those are deeply connected. The individual impact that you have made is a part of what we see now happening in lots of marae. By the way, not just in Mātātua, although Mātātua, as you know, stretches north.
Yes, it does.
But the individual impact that you've had on that continuing evolution, revolution, re-emergence, revitalization.
Again, what's the intent of your question?
The intent of my question is to try and get you to realize that the role that you have played in this is almost infinitesimal, the impact it has had on so many people. And what you have done has created this groundswell of movement that you talked about in that previous answer. And I just wanted to know if you recognize that and what you think about it.
Well, I get a read about that from different individuals I meet who will make comments about that. And might say to me, I've read your book. I said, which one? Your Tikanga book. Oh, yes. And he says, I keep it by my bed. Why do you do that? And he just left it at that. And when that book first came out, lots of letters from women writing in and saying to me that they were pleased that there is now a book they can actually go and read. Because they're on their own, they don't know who their kaumātua are, and so the book helps them. And all right, well, in that way, I get a sense, that I'm doing a bit of good somewhere. And occasionally, I hear among our people here saying, saying to me, yeah, if it wasn't for you, if you weren't here, we wouldn't have got that pare. And I would just say, yeah, I think they're probably right there, that somebody had to fight the fight. And it was a long, long fight to get that done. And what enabled us in the end to get it was the Tribunal Act. Because what had happened before that was every time we raised it, the Minister of the Crown, they said, "You're too late." There's that thing about the legal system.
Yes.
You have to put your complaint in at a certain time, and if you miss out, they won't consider it at all.
Statute of limitations.
Yes, that. They'd quote that at us. But with the Tribunal Act and the tribunal process, we got over it. And so the Minister, Doug Graham at the time, said, the government clearly slipped up on this, and the government will see that you get your house back. So in the end, it all became easy once you had the right people in the right place. But that was a long battle to get the whare back. And a difficult one because museum people were scared that we let that happen. Others are going to do the same thing, which of course they did, eh? But
It continues to happen now. The Aotearoa, yeah.
The Aotearoa.
Yeah.
So I have recognized that part of what I have done, really, is to open the door.
You don't find yourself sometimes just going, as you drive past Mātatua, good stuff, Sid.
No, I don't do that.
Okay. Some of us would if we'd done that. Had ourselves on the back.
No, when I do drive past, I look at it, pleased to see it.
Yeah. Or you might get the guy.
Yeah, really pleased to see it.
Oh, I want to close by because she sits up there, Lady June.
Oh, yeah.
And the photo up there, and your work continues on with your whānau, Kinodi, distinguished professor Linda Smith, and Aroha, world leader in Indigenous rights, and everything else that she does, and a staunch advocate for Indigenous communities across the world. E jo mokopuna, and mokopuna tuarua. There are lots of instances where people talk about the impact of one's life work on their family. Kids and grandkids talk about the fact that, well, dad wasn't home, or he was committed to the iwi and gave his life to the iwi and their impacts on whānau. But, your whānau unit with Lady June, it seems work together a lot. And I think that also says a lot about you, not as Sir Hirini Moko Mead, distinguished Professor Hirini Moko Mead, but as a husband and a papa and a koro. And I think it's a great exemplar and example.
I think it says a lot more about her.
Really?
I think it does. And the fact that she was always there and always backing me, always supporting. Most of what I was able to do, I could not have done, without her. And if I slacked up on the job, I'd get a whittle from her, eh?
She could be quite forceful when she wanted to be.
Oh, yes. And even this place, she had a lot to do with this place. And that's why I'm pleased. There's a room here that's called the Lady June Room, because my whānau played a big role in getting this place established. And their role was all underpaid voluntary role. Others, refused to come and help if they weren't paid. So in the end, it's your own whānau, your own relations who will come aboard and help you get over the initial stages. Then once it's up and running, people forget all about, who did the hard work to get it up. So, Linda and Graham played a huge role. And Aotearoa did. She used to drive up with her kids to lecture here. No pay. We're too poor. They were far too poor. And those women who sort of roll their eyes over there you are, where's the money? Where's the money? All that I could say was, it's coming. And of course, eventually did. Yeah, so I think for a lot of ventures, people just don't realize the impact on the family and the sacrifices that a family has to make. Yes. Her very often had to live on her own while I'm over here with the iwi. And so I try my best to include and bring her here. In the end, people thought she was Ngāti Awa. Yes, I'm very grateful to the role that she played in helping me achieve all of these things that I did achieve. And at one time, I did think that I did it all by myself.
You were quickly dissuaded or disenfranchised from their view, I suspect, if you made it public.
And then one day I woke up and said, actually, that's not true.
No way. Thank you for giving us your time so generously. I just felt that it was right to mention Lady Jim.
Yes. We're always pleased to do that.
And
but then our lecture series, we're hoping that you're going to play a part in this.
I've been asked to do something with it.
Yes.
And as a result of you talking about the history of Te Whare Wānawa when we arangi pleading poverty and the rolling eyes of the queer, I feel I should participate without expecting any fee for it. So I'm happy to do so as a part of my contribution to the whare wānanga that has looked after me on my doctoral study. Engari te korau e mihi ana.
Kia ora.
Kia tau ngā manaakitanga ki runga i a koe. I look forward to the next 96 years.